Hey guys, this is a brief tutorial on how to be an effective discussion facilitator. There's just a few things that are important to keep in mind in order to lead, or rather facilitate, an effective discussion. First and foremost is the role of a discussion in general. Generally speaking, discussions follow after lectures or the reading of some text in a group context. So discussions in and of themselves are really not meant to instruct the participants, but rather to allow them to review and regurgitate the information and the knowledge that they've just received, whether it be from a presentation or from a text that they read collectively. So in that sense, the role of a discussion facilitator, similarly, is not to teach, but rather to facilitate a balanced, well thought out, and beneficial discussion group. So how does one do that? Well, primarily I try to keep in mind three questions, three basic questions which I use for all of my discussion facilitation. The first question is, what did the speaker say? The second question is, do we have any questions or confusion about it? And the third one is, how do we apply what the speaker or the text said to our life? Now, you noticed in all of those three questions, you're not getting, what did I think about it? The reason behind that is because we're often so quick to jump to, what did I think about it, that we don't have a chance to really chew over what was actually said in a particular discussion. So the first question, instead of asking, what did I think about what was said, is simply, what was said. So we go through all of the highlights of what was said, we rehash them, we review them, and try to understand exactly what was said before we say what we think about it. Next, we ask, was there any questions or confusion? And even this isn't really getting at that subjective, what did I think about it? But rather allows us, maybe in a more humble way, to say, look, this didn't really sound right to me. But instead of automatically jumping on it and say, I didn't like it, I'll say, I didn't understand it. It's a big difference. And when I say I don't understand it, then I can ask the question, maybe can we review this? I didn't understand this aspect. And maybe, with the assumption that maybe because I didn't understand it, there's something more that I can understand. And when I do understand that, I will then agree with it. And then the third question being, how do I apply it to my life? Is just basically, again, taking what was said and then trying to kind of apply it to our everyday context. So those three questions, again, I use them almost always when it comes to discussion facilitation, and I find that it works amazingly. Just a few basic points to keep in mind as far as how to actually facilitate the discussion. First and foremost, I think it's important to go around in the very beginning to make sure everyone knows each other, maybe where you're from, a fun fact about yourself, just so that it kind of breaks the ice a little bit. Then I would actually ask the participants themselves to tell me what would make effective and respectful discussion happen. And that's when they basically themselves articulate and come up with some of the rules, you could say, or guidelines that would help them have a really respectful and awesome discussion group. So that would mean like not interrupting each other, or realizing that oftentimes points that seem to disagree aren't necessarily disagreeing, but they're just getting at different aspects of the same point, and things like that, allowing for everyone to speak, so on and so forth. So then you start out like that, and then you can pose the question, what was said, maybe going through some of the highlights, using your own notes as a basis, but really trying to get everybody to speak. And then you go through those questions. One thing I want to emphasize is that when you ask a question, don't expect an immediate response. Sometimes you get these silences, which sometimes we can refer to as awkward silences, but really they're only awkward if we understand them the wrong way. But if we understand them to be silences that are necessary because people need time to reflect when you ask a question, then you can ask the question, stop, and allow people to think and then respond. Sometimes we have the tendency to talk and keep on talking and keep on rephrasing the question because we're nervous that there's going to be an awkward silence. But silence is really important for discussion and allows people to think about what it is they say. The other thing I wanted to mention is it's important to really try to get everybody to participate. Sometimes you'll get the really shy people, and other times you'll have in that same group really talkative people. In order to balance out and level out the playing field a little bit, I encourage you to think about maybe asking them to take a moment at the very beginning and write down one of the major points that they took away from the talk. In that way, you're sort of leveling the playing field. You can have, for that first question, you can have everyone just go around and give 1 point, and that way everybody has a chance to talk. And for the shy people, it gives them the confidence having that written out in front of them to be able to speak in front of the group, and hopefully it also limits the people that are a little bit more talkative as well. And then in general, if someone is going on and on and on and on, I could see someone just respectfully saying, thank you so much, even if it means you have to interrupt them. Thank you so much for your contribution. Let's hear maybe from so-and-so, or what do you think about this? Or just kind of redirecting the conversation in a gentle but firm way. Trying to think if there's anything else that would be helpful. Basically, it's important as a discussion facilitator, in a certain sense, to step back yourself, to not be the center of attention, to try to almost disappear as far as the discussion is concerned. Certainly you can contribute in your own way, but definitely not as the end-all be-all, not contradicting people. Discussions are not the time for actual teaching and instruction again. It's really for reviewing, and if there is a question or some confusion, maybe you can say, I'll write that down and we can ask the speaker or presenter to address that later on. But otherwise, just have fun. It's a really wonderful time to review what was said, to get to know each other in that sort of educational context, and to kind of contemplate what actually we're learning during the presentation, or if we're reading a text during the text. So thank you very much for being a discussion facilitator, and look forward to working with you soon.